Conversation analysis is an approach to the study of social interaction, embracing both verbal and nonverbal conduct in situations of everyday life. As its name implies, CA began with a focus on casual conversation, but its methods were subsequently adapted to embrace more task and institution-centered interactions, such as those occurring in doctors' offices, courts, law enforcement, helplines, educational settings, and the mass media. As a consequence, the term conversation analysis has become something of a misnomer, but it has continued as a term for a distinctive and successful approach to the analysis of social interactions. History. Inspired by Harold Garfinkel's ethno-methodology and Irving Goffman's conception of the interaction order, CA was developed in the late 1960s and early 1970s principally by the sociologist Harvey Sachs and his close associates Emanuel Shegloff and Gail Jefferson. Today CA is an established method used in sociology, anthropology, linguistics, speech communication and psychology. It is particularly influential in interactional sociolinguistics, discourse analysis and discursive psychology. Method. As in all research, conversational analysis begins by setting up a research problem. The data collected for CA is in the form of video or audio recorded conversations. The data is collected with or without researchers' involvement, often simply by adding a video camera to the room where the conversation takes place. From the audio or video recording, the researchers construct a detailed transcription. After transcription, the researchers perform inductive data-driven analysis aiming to find recurring patterns of interaction. Based on the analysis, the researchers develop a rule or model to explain the occurrence of the patterns. Basic structures. Turn-taking organization in the absence of formal agendas. The set of practices through which turns are allocated in conversation has been the subject of study in its own right. The turn-taking model for conversation was arrived at inductively through empirical investigation of field recordings of conversations and fitted to the observationally derived facts as that in conversation, participants are constrained to issue their utterances in allocated turns, and enlist various mechanisms to obtain them. Initial interest was in very simple forms that take place in two-party conversations where sentence completion, or pause, might be enough to allocate the next turn to the co-present party in the manner that has been discussed under the rubric of adjacency pairs. In multi-party conversations, the mechanisms were found to be more complicated where current speaker selects next is a possibility, and how frequently individual utterances are tailored for their turn, sequential implicativeness are. The possibility of obtaining not only the next turn, but a series of turns is documented in analyses of announcements and story prefaces. A certain economy in conversation could be located in the process whereby turns are allocated. That economy was directed at the turn commodity, but also in myriad other instances, for example person identifiers and locators where minimal forms are utilized in an economic fashion. Other collections of turn allocation mechanisms include use of repeats, the elision of lexical forms, the use of temporal regulators in turns including chuckles, yeah, no, and right, the use of speech particles like and o, and other specifically short syllabic devices that are consonant preface like tih. According to CA, the turn-taking system consists of two distinct components: the allocational mechanism, which is responsible for distributing a turn, and the lexical components that parties utilize in filling that turn while remaining concurrently sequentially implicative to deal with the contingency in the process that will result in a subsequent turn allocation. Turn constructional component. The turn constructional component describes basic units out of which turns are fashioned. These basic units are known as turn construction unit or TCUs. Unit types include lexical, clausal, phrasal, and sentential. Turn allocational component. The turn allocational component describes how participants organize their interaction by distributing turns to speakers. At a transition relevance place, a set of rules apply in quick succession so that turns are allocated instantly. 1. Current speaker selects next speaker. This can be done by the use of addressing terms, initiating action with gaze, initiating action that limits the potential eligible respondents and the availability of environmental cues. 2. Next speaker self-selects. When there is no apparent addressee and potential respondents, one might self-select to continue the conversation. This can be done by overlapping, using turn entry devices such as well, or you know, and recycled turn beginning, which is a practice that involves repeating the part of a turn beginning that gets absorbed in an overlap. 3. Current speaker continues. This can be done by adding an increment, which is a grammatically fitted continuation of an already completed turn construction unit. Alternatively, the speaker can choose to start a new TCU, usually to offer clarification or to start a new topic. Sequence organization. This focuses on how actions are ordered in conversation. Adjacency pairs. Talk tends to occur in responsive pairs, however, the pairs may be split over a sequence of turns. Adjacency pairs divide utterance types into first pair parts and second pair parts to form a pair type. There are lots of examples of adjacency pairs including questions-answers, offer-acceptance, refusal and complement-response. Sequence expansion. Sequence expansion allows talk which is made up of more than a single adjacency pair to be constructed and understood as performing the same basic action, and the various additional elements are as doing interactional work related to the basic action underway. Sequence expansion is constructed in relation to a base sequence of a first pair part and a second pair part in which the core action underway is achieved. It can occur prior to the base FPP, between the base FPP and SPP, and following the base SPP. 1. Pre-expansion. An adjacency pair that may be understood as preliminary to the main course of action. A generic pre-expansion is a sum and answer adjacency pair, as in, Mary, yes. It is generic in the sense that it does not contribute to any particular types of base adjacency pair, such as request or suggestion. There are other types of pre-sequence that work to prepare the interlocutors for the subsequent speech action. For example, guess what, as preliminary to an announcement of some sort. Or, what are you doing? Nothing, as preliminary to an invitation or a request. 2. Insert expansion. An adjacency pair that comes between the FPP and SPP of the base adjacency pair. Insert expansions interrupt the activity underway, but are still relevant to that action. Insert expansion allows a possibility for a second speaker, the speaker who must produce the SPP, to do interactional work relevant to the projected SPP. An example of this would be a typical conversation between a customer and a shopkeeper. Customer: I would like a turkey sandwich, please. Server: white or whole grain? Customer: whole grain. Server: okay. 3. Post-expansion. A turn or an adjacency pair that comes after, but still tied to, the base adjacency pair. There are two types: minimal and non-minimal. Minimal expansion is also termed sequence closing thirds, because it is a single turn after the base SPP that does not project any further talk beyond their turn. Examples of SCT include, oh, I see, okay, etc. Preference organization. CA may reveal structural preferences in conversation for some types of actions over other actions. For example, responsive actions which agree with or accept positions taken by a first action tend to be performed more straightforwardly and faster than actions that disagree with or decline those positions. The former is termed an unmarked turn shape, meaning the turn is not preceded by silence nor is it produced with delays. mitigations and accounts, while the latter is termed marked turn shape, which describes a turn with opposite characteristics. Pre-sequences are also a component of preference organization and contribute to this outcome. Repair organization describes how parties in conversation deal with problems in speaking, hearing, or understanding. Repair segments are classified by who initiates repair, by who resolves the problem, and by how it unfolds within a turn or a sequence of turns. The organization of repair is also a self-righting mechanism in social interaction. Participants in conversation seek to correct the trouble source by initiating self-repair and a preference for self-repair. The speaker of the trouble source, over other repair. Self-repair initiations can be placed in three locations in relation to the trouble source: in a first turn, a transition space, or in a third turn. In contrast to the theory developed by John Gumperz, CA maintains it is possible to analyze talk-in interaction by examining its recordings alone. CA researchers do not believe that the researcher needs to consult with the talk participants or members of their speech community. It is distinct from discourse analysis in focus and method. Its focus is squarely on processes involved in social interaction and does not include written texts or larger socio-cultural phenomena. Its method, following Garfinkel and Goffman's initiatives, is aimed at determining the methods and resources that the interactional participants use and rely on to produce interactional contributions and make sense of the contributions of others. Thus, CA is neither designed for, nor aimed at, examining the production of interaction from a perspective that is external to the participants' own reasoning and understanding about their circumstances and communication. Rather, the aim is to model the resources and methods by which those understandings are produced. Application in other fields. In recent years, CA has been employed by researchers in other fields, such as feminism and feminist linguistics, or used in complement with other theories, such as membership categorization analysis. MCA was influenced by the work on Harvey Sachs and his work on membership categorization device. Sachs argues that members' categories comprise part of the central machinery of organization and developed the notion of MCD to explain how categories can be hearably linked together by native speakers of a culture. His example, that is taken from a children's storybook, shows how "mommy" is interpreted as the mother of the baby by speakers of the same culture. In light of this, categories are inference-rich. A great deal of knowledge members of a society have about the society is stored in terms of these categories. Stokoe further contends that members' practical categorizations form part of ethno-methodology's description of the ongoing production and realization of facts about social life and including members' gendered reality analysis, thus making CA compatible with feminist studies. Subject Index of Conversation Analysis Literature. The following is a list of important phenomena identified in the conversation analysis literature, followed by a brief definition and citations to articles that examine the named phenomenon either empirically or theoretically. Articles in which the term for the phenomenon is coined or which present the canonical treatment of the phenomena in bold. Those that are otherwise centrally concerned with the phenomena in italics, and the rest are articles that otherwise aim to make a significant contribution to an understanding of the phenomenon. This list is incomplete. You can help by expanding it. Turn-taking, a process by which interactants allocate the right or obligation to participate in an interactional activity. Repair, the mechanisms through which certain troubles in interaction are dealt with. Preference organization, the ways through which different types of social actions are carried out sequentially.